Bonjour, c'est moi, Salis. Bienvenue at Rethinking the Human Factor. Now that's all a bit of a nod towards my new place or country of residence, but also a nod towards our absolutely fantastic guest that we have on the show today. Now, for those of you who are new to the Rethinking the Human Factor, what is the show all about? Well, the show is all about raising awareness, influencing behaviour, and fostering an organisational culture where information security and data protection are truly valued. Now, for those of you who've been long-time listeners to us here on the show and also, possibly plugged into the research and training that we do for CISOs, education awareness managers and security professionals around employee awareness and behaviour, it will not be news to you that, we've always had a massive, really firm belief that the challenges of awareness, behaviour and culture are not unique to cybersecurity. So a core part of our research over the last 10 years has been about engaging with people from academia and from practice, sometimes from both sides of the fence, who work outside of the cybersecurity industry, bringing them onto the show and asking them to share their insights into what they know around the challenges that they face around human awareness, human behaviour and human culture. And our guest today is a great example of somebody that fits that profile outside of the cybersecurity industry, but with real insight and real insight which has been put into effect as well. And our guest today is going to be talking to us from the perspective of branding. Now, branding is something that many of you will have heard about for possibly over the last maybe 6 or 7 years now. What I guess observe across the industry is an increasing awareness of the potential role that marketing skills, disciplines, including branding, for example, could potentially contribute to developing awareness campaigns which not just make people aware of the brand, but actually get people to buy into influencing their behaviours, to buy into the brand values, for example. So it's something that we're seeing more and more people talk about. But it's really, really important that you need to understand the difference between branding and marketing, and actually what branding is. Because for me, in a number of the conversations that I have, and it came out especially in my research, at the beginning 10 years ago now, there is at times some real confusion amongst security professionals about what branding actually is and how you go about it and the benefits that it can deliver. So what I'm hoping to do today with our amazing guest is to maybe highlight some of those issues in a really informative, educational way and enable you to take away some of those insights and go and rethink the human factor within your own organisation. So without any further ado, let's get on with the interview. Hello there and welcome to this deep Rethinking the Human Factor podcast with me, your host, Bruce Hallas. And for those of you who are new to the show, what is the show about? Well, the show is all about how we as security and data protection professionals help raise levels of awareness, change behaviours and foster an organisational culture where security and data protection are truly valued. Now, for those of you that have been on this journey with me now for the past 7 years, you've probably heard me talk quite a lot about how we might want to think of security as a product. And if it was a product, how to make people aware of that product? How do I influence the chances of them sort of buying that product? And how do I make sure that they keep coming back once they've bought that product, once they've had that engagement with us? And for me, as somebody who trained many, many years ago in marketing, I see some really strong parallels with the challenges that marketeers and brand specialists and owners face day in, day out. And so it's always been a thing for me to try and sort of engage with the world of marketing and branding to sort of learn insights from them about how we might want to reshape what we're doing when it comes to security and data protection, education and awareness. And so it's with absolute pleasure that I'm going to introduce you to our new guest today, a lady by the name of Geraldine Michel. Geraldine actually comes from the Sorbonne University, and I've been working closely with the Sorbonne in relation to cybersecurity and behavioural stuff. Geraldine real focuses upon branding, but obviously she's got an experience in the marketing background as well. And so it'd be great for you all to listen to some of the insights that Geraldine's got to share. So hi, Geraldine. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Hello, Bruce. Thank you.
So, Geraldine, first, this is the easy question. Okay, we always start this well. No one ever gets this one wrong. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I'm professor at the Sorbonne Business School and also director of the chair Brands and Values. And now for 25 years, we are working on the brand consumer behavior to better understand how and why the brand is so important for consumers and how the brands influence our behaviors. Finally, we recognize that the brand is something more than a logo, something more than advertising, and the brand vehiculate values, ideology that help people to have a sense in their consumption and meaning in their consumption is the most important way for us to continue our research about the branding.
Okay, so I'm going to just pull you back to something. So you mentioned there that you were the director for brand and values. When you say values in that context, what do you mean by values?
I mean, values are meaning like benevolence or innovation that are like a red line to understand your behaviors. I mean, values are red lines to help you to know what you can do and what it's not possible to do. And you can do and you can act and you can accept something when you stay consistent with your values. And so it's why the values are not only words in the communication, but something very important to help people inside or outside of the organization to help us to know what is the most important for us and to give us meaning.
So when you're talking about values, then you're talking about, I guess, things that we have on a subconscious level as well as a conscious level. So things that we think about, but also things that subconsciously, they're just part of who we are and they give us meaning, and they are actually quite influential when it comes to decisions, behavioral outcomes, which are associated with picking a particular brand over another brand.
Yes, it's conscious and subconscious, but I mean, it's something that you can realize step by step in your life, that finally you better understand your choice in your life about, I don't know, about your job, about the choice of your friends, etc. So you can realize that all your way in the life are consistent with some values, like a purpose. I mean, it's like a fight because it's something for you is very important to be involved in your work or to be honest with your friends, and you can't accept to make something against these values.
And in previous conversations we've had, I mean, where do those values in your mind come from?
I think, yes, you have education, your education. I mean, values are very different of personality. For me, the personality is very stable. If you are nervous, I think you are nervous, I mean, for a long time in your life. But the values are dynamic. I mean, you can change your values maybe at the beginning of your professional life. Maybe you are very ambitious and you want to achieve your goal, etc. But step by step, you will have other values when you have children or when you have some accident in your life. So the values is not always the same during your life. So it's why it's not something unique when you're born. No. It's something that also you build by yourself, thanks your experience that you have in your life.
I think it's really important there. The point there about experience. I think our values get shaped by the experiences we have through our life. But you also referred back to education. So the education that we go through, the system of life, the process of life, going to, first when you're born, you learn, your experiences are all based around your interaction with your parents, and then it's with your sort of family a little bit, beyond that might be with your grandparents, for example, and your aunts and uncles. And then you go to school, to nursery, and you suddenly experiencing other people outside your immediate family. And the life carries on like that. And each one of those points is a point of
engagement and that experience helps shape your values. And the thing you highlighted, which is something that I've really got to grips with a bit, was that at different points in your life, your values will shift. So you said when you're at the beginning of your career, you might be prone to taking more chances. You might be more risky. You might be prepared to, like you said, you might be much more ambitious. So you're suddenly working all the hours that are there. And then you have children, and suddenly the children reshape how you think. And then people get a little bit older and they're approaching retirement. Their priorities seem to be very, very different. So do you think understanding that is a really important factor when it comes to building a brand? Something for marketeers and for brand owners, that understanding who you're appealing to and at what point they're at in their life and what are the values that are most prevalent at that point is going to be of importance.
Yes, it's very important, but more for the brand. I mean, I don't know about the people that they are working for or in the brand. But when you manage the brand, you have to think the brand as a person. So it's why that this person have to incarnate values. So it's why you have to think of the values of this brand. Now you have another case. If you are founder of your business, in this case, you are the brand. And in this case, your values influence and are incarnated in the brand. And in this case, it's very helpful for everybody to be very clear about these values and purpose, to know what is the vision, where we want to go, and why we are here. I mean, the reason to be is the most important, to know the reason to be of the brand, of yourself and your business, to know how to engage and to give meaning to your employees, and also to give meaning to your clients. So yes, values are very important to manage the brand.
So here's a question. I mean, you've very nicely drawn a line there and pulled an illustration out of where you've got a founder of an organization. You could even say, the modern day chief information security officer within an organization. So that it's the first time the role's being created within the organization. It's a new department. It's like a new company. It's a new brand within the overall organization. So the founder, a lot of the values associated with the brand come from the founder. Okay, so do they, once the founder starts to employ people around themselves to sort of take their vision and to implement it, do the values change? And the reason why I'm asking this question, when you think about high-end luxury goods, okay, so, think of Louis Vuitton, for example, you often have one person who's like the inspiration, who's like, the founder, who is like the chief designer. This is the person that's out in the public domain, really out there. And everybody looks to that individual as, setting the brand. They are the brand. And then they have a big team of people who are responsible for actually implementing the brand. Do you sometimes find that, when you move from having just a founder of a small setup to suddenly a founder who's now got a big team around them, the brand changes at all? What are the problems that happen at that point?
That's right. The brand is the soul of the company. When you change the director or artistic director, for example, in the luxury house, you have to be sure that both the new artistic director, etc., understand and incarnate these values, even if the products, the actions are different, because you can act differently the same values. So you can keep the values, but with different products, different styles, different designs. And it's why it's also very important for luxury house to change sometimes of the artistic directors, to give a new age, to rejuvenate also the brand, but with the same values. And also these values are also, like I told you before, dynamic. Also, it's dangerous if we think that, okay, we are red or we are green and we stay red or we stay green and we employ only green people or red people, etc. Because you can enrich your brand if you think always with these values. So it's why it's very challenging, because at the same time you have values, but you have to enrich your values. And it's why with some research we show that when you are red, okay, it's very important to work with people not only red, but with people red and blue. And thanks to their blue, you can enrich your values, your brand, and you learn something. It's like a self-expansion. Because if you are red and you stay only with red people, I mean, you die. Because always you have to enrich this red. So it's why always you have to be open with other values, with other manner to do, but keeping in mind root. So it's why it's very important also with the social media to know that you don't have to stay only with the same community, with the same recommendations, because with the algorithm, you can you can stay very narrow in your values and lacking and missing also other things that you can share, because you are not only red or blue, you are red, but also a little bit yellow and a little bit blue. And it's why it's more important also to have this open mind and not only, okay, I'm red and I stay red and I work with people that are red and etc. So it's why it's a big challenge, yes.
So, I mean, the interesting point there, I guess, for our listeners is that, from somebody who specializes in branding, there's a recognition there that if you only employ, or arguably, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you only collaborate with people who are the same as you, and you use the color there, red, and then you talk about blue. So if you only collaborate with people who are only ever red, then in a way, you narrow down the range of opportunities and possibilities for yourself. So if you only ever red, then you get red. If you collaborate with people who are blue, okay, then actually what you get is both red, blue, and if I remember rightly, if you combine red and blue, I think you get green. So it's like you combine two separate colors, you end up with a third color. And suddenly the possibilities, the opportunities have trebled just by, as a brand specialist as a brand owner, being open to other people's ideas and other people's influences. I think that's a really important thing to highlight. I mean, in the security industry, I don't know if it's the same within branding, marketing, but we call it the echo chamber, where we talk to people who all have the same views. They've all pretty much had the same sort of careers, the same sort of education, the same sort of life experience, and we talk to them about our problems, and we've all got the same problems, and we just talk and talk and talk, and it's like you're in a big chamber. And there is it's interesting from a behavioral psychology perspective. We as humans, we get real comfort from being in groups. And the group parameter is set by those things: our life, our education, our careers, our life experience, the problems that we all have that are common to each other, and our consistent view on what the solution should be. And so we get pulled into these groups. And each industry seems to do this. They build walls around themselves. They have conferences where the only people that go to the conference, the only people that stand up in front of all the attendees, are the people that are mirroring the people in the audience. And I sometimes wonder with brands, because I know you've written about collaboration, whether or not part of that collaboration from a brand perspective is about opening the doors and saying, hey, look, we just want to get some fresh ideas in here. We want to be challenged so that we can improve the brand experience.
Exactly. And it's why the best brand managers are not only managers that keep the consistency of the values and the consistency between products and values, but the best managers and brand managers are these people that know how to incorporate the other things in their values and how to enrich the brand and the values thanks to the other manner to see the life and other values. So it's why it's not the work of manager is not only a guardian, like a guardian of the soul, but is more orchestra, compositor to have the ability to integrate new things in the meaning of the brand.
Yeah, that's such a lovely way of putting it. It's a lovely metaphor for doing it. But it's almost like there's the brand manager's day-to-day job, okay, which is very tactical and it's just getting things done, the delivery point. But also it's the inspiration that drives the choices we make about the things that we need to deliver day to day. That inspiration, I think, comes for brand managers, seems to be about being plugged in to not just your own industry, your own specific bit of the world, but getting a broader understanding of the world so that you can then draw on those influences to better inform the work that you do day in, day out. And I think that when you use the example of the composer, there is a very procedural way of writing music, but the music you write is driven by the inspiration you get from elsewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. And some people say they get it just purely from within themselves. But for me, I wonder whether or not there are, actually, when people say it just flows from me, and it's like, is it from you or is it your experience of life, which then enables you to, let that flow out, let that inspiration happen. So, yeah, and I think that's really important, defining that there's almost like there's two elements to what makes a good brand manager. So I'm going to ask you this question. What's the difference between marketing and branding?
If I use two sentences, I can say marketing is I make what you expect, and branding is if you love me, follow me. It means that in marketing, you study the consumer needs, the consumer expectations, and you try to answer to these needs and to satisfy these needs and expectations. And people like you because you do what they expect. But in branding, you don't ask to people what they expect, but you are your values, your purpose, your reason to be. You are very convincing in your vision of the world, the vision of the market, of your product, and you impose your ideas. And then, if you like it, if you love my products, follow me. So, in branding, you start with values. You don't start with the needs of consumers.
Market research and understanding your customer to a certain degree, I would have thought.
Yeah. Sometimes the people, they don't know really what they want. I mean, even if they tell you some answers, they are not experts of everything. It's why the vision of the computer of Steve Jobs was better than what the people can dream. So it's why he became a leader. Because his vision was better and was in advance of the expectation of consumers.
So what is interesting here is, for the listeners, is we've got this sort of, the brand is about the values, it's putting those values out there, and it's about delivering on those values and then attracting people who share those values. Whereas the marketing side of, when you think about marketing, it's actually about holding a mirror up almost to your market, your audience, and trying to understand what it is that they want. But the point you're making is, they don't necessarily always know what they want, and that actually sometimes what they say they want and what they actually need are two, sometimes slightly and sometimes quite significantly different things. Part of the marketeer's responsibility then has surely got to be to listen to that feedback, is to design ways of getting that research which reduce the bias that people have of saying, this is what I want, when actually they want something else. And then when they get that data back, is to try and interpret that data in a way to say, well, is how much of this is actually about what they think they want, and how much of this is actually about what it is that they actually need. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But something more, another idea, but listening to you, I realize that I speak a lot about values, and that's right, that brands, the roots of the brand are values. Values don't mean storytelling. It's not only about words and meaning. It's also about actions, act, engagement, involvement, and proof that you act what you are and you act what you say. And today people expect actions and real proof.
So it's like authenticity. So it's something that often when I go around organizations helping them with these challenges, often I say, well, does your organization have clear values? And they'll point out, people talk around and go, they point out these posters that you see on the walls, and they're normally in nice frames. And sometimes they're distributed throughout the organization. Sometimes they're just really, on the floor with all the senior management team. And they'll talk about, vision, innovation, et cetera, and there'll all be these value statements. But it's one thing to have statements. But I think the point you're making is that for the brand values to be authentic, and authenticity is really driving a lot. I mean, you think a lot of what's going on in terms of engagement with content, marketing content, for example, brand content, is about authenticity. People are drawn to the authentic brand, and that authenticity comes through the actions that you're talking about. It's like, yes, you say that, but what are your actions? And is there a gap? Is there what I call a dissonance between what you say and what you do? That's what you're getting at, isn't it?
Yes, it is authenticity, but also legitimacy. You are legitimate if you act and your values are in the same line. The legitimacy. And you can be perceived legitimate in your market, in your action, also for your individual life. I mean, a person can be legitimate,
I know, it's that whole thing of when people inspire from the front. So, I mean, this is a slightly politicized comment that I'm about to make, but in this time of COVID-19, how many leaders in society have said one thing in terms of how everybody should behave and then gone on to do something contrary to that themselves?
Yes. It's why also something, it's not brand, but it's very important because brand is the life, and we are speaking about something, beyond products and sales. But it's like the name is silent education. It's like when you raise your children, if you tell them every day, don't watch the TV, don't play with your mobile phone, but you are on the sofa in the evening, watching the TV. I mean, even if you tell them to not do that, but they see you watching the TV and playing with your mobile phone, I mean, you can achieve your goal. So it's the silent education,
That's really interesting. You use that phrase, silent education, something that's really important to me. I guess what I try to do in trying to influence it in my particular industry is around the concept of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And people think of awareness often, if we thought it from a marketing perspective, for example, people think of awareness as how you communicate, how you advertise to people. So it's very direct, it's planned, it's got a structure to it. It's all about, pushing content out to people. But actually, possibly the biggest form of awareness, and probably the least expensive in terms of budget, okay, is what people see going on around them every day.
Yeah.
So, from a brand perspective, you can invest very heavily in developing a brand and then sharing that brand. And a lot of people possibly listening to this podcast would think, okay, so that's about finding, what channels, this is my audience, what are the channels that it's best to communicate with them upon, and then developing content. You push, the brand comes alive through those channels and the content that you create, all those type of things. But actually, a lot of the awareness actually happens when people just carry out their lives as normal and they experience the brand or a product from a particular manufacturer with a particular name. And so a lot of that awareness is actually what I call below the line. From a marketing perspective, they often talk about above line marketing, and then you have below line marketing. And below line marketing is that bit where it's, people just experience the product. It's not in a structured way. It's a case of, having a chat with a friend who's got the product, and they turn around and go, oh, it said this, but actually it turned out to be pretty poor quality product. Or, they're there and they watch somebody who's got those shoes on and actually go, they really, really go well with those jeans that you've got on. And it's just all those experiences which are what I call below line. They're unstructured. There's something that you can barely manage. And it's a bit like you're saying there, as an adult, you're trying to pass values on and educate children. But if you're then going on and doing exactly the opposite, it's like, what is it that influences their behavior? Is it what you say or is it what you do? And often in business and even governments, etc., they say you lead from the top. So if the chief exec is doing this, but the policy for the organization says something different, what do people do? Do they follow the policy or do they follow what they see coming from their leaders? So I'm going to ask you a question now, because I'm just conscious of time that we got, because you've got a lot to be doing there at the Sorbonne. The difference between, branding and something you said is more than a logo and advertising. Okay. So I've often come across, as part of the research, people will talk to them about marketing and branding. They often think of, when I say branding, they sort of point the finger at this logo that's being created. And for me, I immediately think, okay, they haven't quite understood what branding is, and that the logo and advertising, it isn't just that. So can you just expand upon that? That is the logo part of the brand? What role does the logo play in the branding? But also really try and paint the picture, which is that it's a small part of a bigger challenge.
The logo, the slogan, the color, so all the communication for me is only the expression of the values. So it's why if you choose sometimes the logo before thinking about the meaning of the brand, is a mistake. And sometimes a big mistake, because the first goal of the logo is to express your values, meaning. So it's also the slogan. Everything has to be thought, regarding your values.
Okay. Now, see, I'm an absolute believer in what you're saying there. I think often when you look at organizations, you go, okay, well, you've got a brand and you take the values, then drive everything about the organization. That could be, what does the logo look like? But it's also about how do you deliver on those values. So even the internal processes within the organization are very much driven by the brand and its values. So if there's an emphasis upon service and quality and doing the right thing, then all those three statements, there are processes to deliver it. It's almost like defining the value is an objective, and you design your business processes to achieve that. So you might have a logo, but then you've got to deliver on those values, and that's about processes, surely.
Yes, and you are right. I forgot the most important thing. The product or the service is the first expression, the first proof of your values. It's why the quality, the features of your product have to be thought and have to be analyzed regarding your values. Yes.
Mm. So how do you normally go about trying to ascertain your values? It's a really strange question. Imagine you're a brand manager, okay?
Yes.
That's the job. And you've just been recruited into a new job for a new organization and to head up the brand. What is the first thing that you do when you take that job on? So there is a brand in place. Well, you assume there's a brand in place, but it's not the brand that you built. So when you first join an organization and you're responsible for that brand and getting people to buy into the brand, to buy into those values, and then to use that to influence their behavior, what's the first thing you need to be doing?
So for me, the first thing is, because the brand is as a person, you have to speak with your colleagues at the different levels. I mean, from the person in the welcoming desk to the engineer, you have to speak with people. I mean, to understand what do they think about the brand, what the brand means for them, to understand who is this person and how this person is perceived in the organization. And step by step, like a person you are, and also you better understand how this person is in life in the organization, and you look all is advertising, all products, to understand who is this person, thanks to its action, and also thanks also to the people working for this brand. And step by step, you make the brand yourself, you appropriate the brand, and you understand the soul of the brand. Because the soul of the brand will be these common things that people are in their mind, the central core, like the social representation of the brand in the company is so important to work very well, because you better understand how to modulate, how to change what the people think about this brand, and how to work with people in the company to raise, to make the brand better.
So in a way, what we're talking here, it's almost, I think the language that we would use is something like it's a brand audit. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
And more than audit is like you make the psychology of the brand,
Yeah, I think that's a really important line to draw there, Geraldine. I think it's really important because in my industry, when we use the word audit, what we mean is that we check that people are doing what they said they should be doing. I mean, so we have a range of policies, and we audit against the policy. We audit the organization, the day-to-day behaviors. Are these policies, are these processes and procedures being followed? And it's very, very mechanical. Whereas a brand, so you can have a brand audit, but actually understanding are the brand values that we currently design everything with, are they still the values? Is the way that we express our values the most efficient way of doing that in terms of efficiency, in terms of achieving whatever strategic objectives that we have as brand managers? So I think it's really important to do that. Can I ask a question? Who owns the brand?
You mean owns?
So somebody would say, well, it's the brand director owns the brand. But does the brand director own the brand, or does the whole organization own the brand?
Is all the organization.
Okay.
Because everybody co-create and give meaning to the brand.
That is lovely. That's really important, because I think often within my industry, what we see is that, we say, education and awareness, information security, data protection, they all the responsibility. That's this department over here. It's even got the name on their title. Okay. But actually, those values can only ever be achieved if the whole organization is living and breathing them. If they all take their own, this is my responsibility in relation to that, and I will deliver against that responsibility. And again, that's the thing for me. I think of security as a brand within an organization. Just as there are organizations that have brands like, for handbags or for shoes or for cars or for whatever different product is out there. You might have somebody who's got the title, but actually it's the ownership for the brand is the whole organization.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Okay. All right, look, we're just coming up to the time now. I suspect the guy with the drill will start drilling very soon. You're like, all right, she said an hour. It's time to go. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, Geraldine. And that's been really interesting talking to you. I'm absolutely convinced. I mean, that listeners will take something away from that. I mean, I know that from speaking with you, obviously in this chat, but obviously before as well, I like to think of myself as having had some training in marketing and had some experience in marketing, sort of being aware of branding and having done the research here at Rethinking the Human Factor. One of the things that's been an absolute pleasure is talking to you is like finding, wow, that's new. That's new. That's new. I think, whoa, this is really, really inspirational. And I think it's one of the reasons why, I'm looking forward to doing more work with Jean-Luc and various multidisciplinary leaders within the university on this particular challenge. So, yeah, thank you very much for joining us. And you came into the office today specifically for this interview. So I'm really getting into Paris is never easy. It's not the easiest of jobs. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your insights around branding. And also, what's been great is that you've been able to talk about it within an organizational context as well. So it's been really, really very helpful.
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, it was a good experience. Very good. Because also for me, it's very inspiring to speak with people from other side, from not marketing, from not branding. And I have to explain and to be very clear in my mind so also I make improvement thanks to you.
Well, we'll draw this back to, if you only talk to red people or blue people, okay, you're never going to get green. So bringing us together, you from your background, me from my background, and then having this conversation, and then, we challenge each other and we share insights as a part of that process of challenging. And then you're like, and you take away things from that. And that's why you get your red, you get your blue, and then you find that suddenly there's a new color, and that's green. Somebody's going to send me an email going, red and blue doesn't make green.
We are the best example of the blue and green, or red and green, or exactly.
Yeah, that's it. We're a good example of that. I do believe that's really important. I mean, this has been really, by talking to people outside of the security industry, a part of this research, and that's a major part of what my research has been, reaching to people outside of the industry. That's what's really challenged my own assumptions around what the challenge is, but also what the potential solutions could be. But it's finding the right platform to do that. I think one of the biggest challenges my listeners have, they don't have the time to go and do the sort of research that maybe you and I would have. They're often what we call firefighting. So they're doing the operational day-to-day things. When we've done research with listeners, because we're looking to run a summit ourselves, one of the problems they always report to us is that they do not have the resource, the capacity, the time, the budget, whatever you want to call it, to sit back and to think and to be open to discussions with lots of other people, and to then have time to consume that in a way, in a meaningful and structured way, which then enables them to think about how they can improve what it is that they do day to day. And that's why I think it's important. That's why I think academia has a massive role to play in rethinking the human factor. But I also think practitioners have a massive role to play as well. If you can get enough of the practitioners' time and get enough of them around the table, or around the microphone in this case, then it helps people rethink. And that's what the podcast is all about. It's about rethinking the human factor. So, it's lovely to have you on the show, and we're hoping to get a couple of more people from the university on the show as well in the coming series. So thanks again for your time, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes. Thank you very much.
So I hope you really enjoyed that conversation we just had with Geraldine. Now, Geraldine runs the whole branding piece at the Sorbonne University. So that's not just training undergraduates and postgraduates as well, but it's also about their outreach work within the industry. And I think what's really fascinating, when I first started speaking to Geraldine, and she's talking about things very much from that sort of branding perspective, and then you sort of ask the right questions and position things in the right way, which is a marketing exercise in and of its own. Suddenly there was just these moments of magic, speaking with Geraldine, even before the interview that you've just listened into, where, there was a degree of synchronicity. There was an understanding going on between sort of an information security professional, somebody like myself, and then Geraldine, who's, when it comes to branding, you just don't get much better in terms of overall knowledge about, not just what's happening now, but what's happened in the past. And she uses that to sort of better judge what the future could be looking like as well. So yeah, for me, I really, really enjoyed having that conversation with her. And I hope that there are several pieces of really nice golden nuggets for you to take away, and to sit back and rethink the human factor within your own organization and the potential role that branding could play in driving employee awareness, behavior, and culture. Now, if you find that sort of stuff interesting, how do you make sure that you don't miss out on any future episodes that we have? Well, I guess the first thing that you can do is subscribe to your podcast, your preferred podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. The other thing that you could do is just, tune into our social media accounts at Rethinking the Human Factor, or my own personal social media account, which would be on LinkedIn or on Twitter. So just look out for Bruce Hallas. The other thing you can do is just regularly visit www.re-thinkingthehumanfactor.com website. And there you have access to the whole archive, which is coming up to now 50 separate episodes. And you can even subscribe there to receive updates on when the new podcast episodes are out. Now, if you find this sort of stuff really interesting, you're like, okay, this is great. There's lovely bits and pieces of theory here. It's stimulating me to think slightly differently. How do I bring this all together so that I can start rethinking the human factor within my own organization? How can you do that? Well, the good news is, since 2017, I've been running a number of training courses and coaching programs. And in this year, 2021, we actually provided the update of that. And so now we've got a training program which starts off with our Rethinking Human Factor Foundation course and culminates in you becoming a certified human factor architect. And another option you can have if training just isn't enough and you want real support on an ongoing basis, we also have a coaching program as well. The thing that's really great about what we're trying to do with the training is that whilst we're based here in France, in Europe, we're trying to make sure that this insight is available to a more broader audience in different time zones. So that training is also available in US time zones and also Australian time zones as well. So if you're listening from the US or you're listening from Australia and you want to sort of do some training, which is going to broaden your horizons in terms of how you rethink the human factor and then sort of use that human insight to sort of drive how you design with the human in mind, then please go and check out our training page at re-thinkingthehumanfactor.com/training. Come and register for the webinars, which are also run in different time zone, and come and find out about what we're trying to do to help you and your team design education and awareness programs which really, really demonstrably go around changing employee awareness, behavior and culture. Right, anyway, it's been great to have you here with us on the show. Really look forward to have you come and join us in a couple of weeks' time where we've got another absolutely fantastic episode as we're running closer and closer towards the end of the series. Thank you for joining us, and just remember, keep rethinking the human factor.